Here's an interesting fan question.
Uncle Chael, I gotta ask you. I'm sitting here watching the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship on YouTube. Some pretty good fights. And I'm thinking in my head, what if Conor McGregor were to fight Floyd Mayweather under the BKFC rules? Bare knuckle, 5 2-minute rounds. Maybe you had to tweak the rounds a little bit for, fan lore. The circular ring, the ability to clinch with one hand and punch and dirty box in the clinch and use some wrestling skills when they're standing up in the clinch like that. Does that favor Conor McGregor? Does that swing things his way a little bit? Does that force Floyd to engage, more proactive instead of being defensive? Let me know what you think.
Allow me to play along, but I must tell you I don't love the theme of this for one reason. It seems that no matter how many times two guys have a dispute, they then have a dispute resolution known as the fight, that we want to break the fight down and then we're happy to reimagine and reinvigorate and re-argue who would have won if the rules were different. And there seems to never be a level of silliness that we're not willing to go to. I mean, at some point, do we just give both the guys a sword? At some point, do we handcuff both the guys so that it's just purely a kicking contest, and therefore the kickers of the world can prove that their guy was better at that one art? Now, I don't feel that's fully what you did. I think that is very relevant because bare knuckle is a real thing now. And I will tell you a couple of examples. Okay, first off, it would be very fair for me to say I think it is a scary thought of what Floyd Mayweather could do if he was to punch somebody without a glove on. And we saw that one time in my memory. Mike Tyson walked outside of a bar, and it was a fellow boxer, it was a professional boxer, but they had no gloves. There was one punch. Tyson shattered his hand. He hit so hard, not having wraps, not having the glove to protect it, and he shattered his opponent's face. It was one punch, and it was a very scary thing. And the only reason I offer that story for you is this wasn't just some random guy Mike hit. This was a fellow professional boxer who knew how to tuck and roll, who knew how to block, who walked out, who saw the target, who had a go, but didn't have some of the protective measures, in this case, gloves, mouthpiece, in place. So I think that that's a very relevant story, and I do think that that consideration should be paid a little bit to Floyd, and why maybe he isn't the big scary puncher that Iron Mike is. I don't think that you would also get to then argue, well, yeah, but Conor is trained and could roll with it. Look, getting punched by a pro boxer with no glove on is a very, very scary thing. So I think that we would have to tip our hat to that a little bit. And then I think the reason you brought this up is perhaps because you saw Paulie fight Artem. And I was surprised by that as well. I was really surprised that Artem Lobog could go into a boxing match with a two-time former world champion in boxing and have any level of competitiveness, let alone go the distance, let alone essentially win every round. So when we see that and we're confronted with that, Justin Buckles, does that name ring a bell? Former head coach at Team Alpha Male. He did not love my opinion of boxing being shown up in the Paulie versus Artem fight. And he did a piece and he sent it to me through social media, but he made some excellent points. And Coach Buckles changed the way that I now view bare knuckle. And here were some of the points that he made. He goes, hey, wait a second. Before you try to say that boxing failed in bare knuckle boxing, make sure you understand the rules of bare knuckle boxing, where a clinch and a dirty box is allowed, which is completely against the rules in amateur and or professional boxing. So it's not the same sport. As soon as they're allowed to grapple, even in the form of a clinch while standing up, that changes the sport. And that's also where Artem did some of his best work. Well, that's an excellent point. And that was also something that I appreciated Justin bringing to my attention so that when I move forward and I'm watching this kind of stuff, I can appreciate it a little bit more different. And it was something that I needed him to tell me, even though I saw it, for whatever reason, I missed it. And I think that might be what you're speaking to. If you do have some of that clinch work, and if you were to go back and watch Conor versus Floyd, and you would see so many of those clinch positions where Conor was bigger, he was stronger. Floyd did not like being in there. Floyd needed the referee to come in and separate them to put them back, right, toe to toe. It'd be a fair question, which is the one you're making. How would Conor and Floyd do in bare knuckle? And I think particularly if you were to look at the ways that is contested right now, 5 rounds, 2 minutes apiece, which means Conor's not going to get fatigued. Conor had every right, by the way, to get tired in that match. It was an event that he had never done before, in a sport that he had never done before, for 10 rounds of which he had never done. But there's no way to know how to pace yourself. I could only imagine putting myself in Conor's shoes. You could try to emulate that in practice through sparring. But to mimic it completely, no, you can't do. Conor took in half an hour and then he got tired. In the situation you're proposing, there's only a maximum of 10 minutes. I don't think he would get fatigued. I think you ask an interesting question. I'm just not ready to say, oh yes, Conor would win, because I feel it's underhanded. When two guys have a dispute, they have a resolution to the dispute under a specific agreed upon rules. I think we all have to live with that result, whether we like it or not.
Thanks for liking and subscribing to the bad guy of YouTube. Chael Sonnen, he's a-coming, breaking down your fighting news. Better subscribe to the bad guy right here on YouTube. Bringing new content every single day. The stories of fighters, a true insider with his own special way. He's Chael Sonnen.